like you now to welcome Jon Trickett MP to speak. Jon has written some very good and very interesting articles on the economy at the present time, and also was very active and instrumental in the very good vote we got on the Trident replacement issue in the last Parliament. And so I'd like to give a warm welcome to Jon.
Thank you very much,
Set out his story. Jon.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you very much indeed. And can I congratulate the organisers of this meeting? Like Kate, I want to focus particularly on the issue of Trident. When I actually headed up the list of MPs who sought to really refuse the proposition of the Labour government to renew Trident, it was pleasing to see many MPs from the Labour Party, but also from other parties too, and I've no doubt that Caroline, had she been an MP at that time, would have been in the forefront of that. But it does make me remember that our friends in the Liberal Democrats, almost to a man and a woman, voted against Trident too, in fact possibly unanimously did. It's very interesting to see what happens when we get further into this Parliament, when further decisions have to be taken, and it won't be too far away, because Trident, the Trident approval really was for the initial stage. The initial stage is called the initial gate. The main gate, which will decide whether to proceed or not, actually will not, the decision will not be taken until probably later this year. And I think we need to be campaigning and making sure that our arguments are heard as we run up to the main gate decision, because that main gate decision will commit us to a new fleet of nuclear delivery mechanisms, which is frightening in its capacity to destroy life and to damage our planet in a very, very significant way, as I'll describe in a moment or two. And at a time, as Kate has said, of economic crisis, it does seem to me that the question has to be asked once again, when the poor are being made to pay for the bankers' crisis, why it is the United Kingdom feels it necessary to build these abominable weapons of mass destruction. And remember, let's remind ourselves what this decision effectively entails. I don't know whether it's going to be 4 or 3 submarines, maybe 4, maybe 3. But each one of those submarines will carry a capacity of 16 missiles, and each missile will carry warheads. Now, each of the warheads, remember there'll be 48 warheads on every missile. Each of those warheads is 8 times the destructive capacity of that which was launched against Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Remember, in Japan, 70,000 people died instantaneously the moment the bombs were released. Each of these warheads has an 8-fold capacity. And so you can imagine that hundreds of thousands of people will be killed by each warhead. And with each missile carrying up to 48 warheads, you can see the implications of the decision which has been taken about this weapon system. They say, and I understand it's correct, that if you exploded the load of a single submarine, you would change the climate of our planet. There can be no skeptics in the scientific community or anywhere else as to what would happen. What would happen is a dust cloud so immense will be created, let alone the deaths and the devastation which be caused to the immediate vicinity, which I've just tried to describe, that dust cloud would immediately reduce the temperature of the planet, such as to damage many living organisms. That is the scale of what might happen if only one of those missiles was to be released. Now, some might say, well, actually, it's a cunning plan to combat global warming. I rather think we might come up in this room here with some of the solutions. And I want to propose, not that we begin to cut expenditure, because I do believe that the consensus amongst economists, and especially in the media, and also in Parliament, amongst the parliamentary leaderships, that we have to start cutting now is a mistaken one. If you cut at a time of recession, what you get is further recession. You get a downward spiral. You will see more unemployment and less economic activity. We should be spending, but more than is spending, we should be investing. Now, we're about to decide to invest £76 billion in these awesome weapons capable of destroying life across huge areas and damaging the planet in quite an extraordinary way. Wouldn't it be better, not that we cut the £76 billion, but that we began to use it in new ways? What I'd like to see is something which has been talked about but not properly discussed, is the establishment of a green investment bank. And that green investment bank should be required, tasked, to begin to build a new economy for our country. And instead of creating weapons of mass destruction capable of destroying our climate in a horrendous way, why should we not use the money instead to build new skills, to invest in new enterprises, to make our country a greener place, and to lead our planet in the ways of peace and of environmental change which is beneficial rather than in ways of destruction? And I think that that Green Investment Bank should receive the money which is currently being proposed to be utilised for Trident. I'll give you two examples. The first thing is the marine technology which exists at Barrow to build submarines and to design these weapons of mass destruction could well be used instead to begin to harness the power of the sea. The HSBC says that for every pound you invest in green technology, it will produce £4 in additional GDP. £1 billion of investment will produce £4 billion of growth. And that in itself would also begin to create new mechanisms for creating the energy which we need in the new century as we move forward. The second example, something which has been talked about, high-speed rail. For £30 billion investment, you could link London, the Midlands, the North West and the North East. You could eliminate the necessity to fly because the connections will be faster. You would create, and these are not my figures, these are KPMG figures. KPMG estimate for £30 billion, you could build all that high-speed network, you could create 42,000 additional jobs, and it will produce, amazingly, about £10 billion a year additional tax revenue because of the additional jobs created. Wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if our parliamentary leaderships of all the parties, but particularly, I said, to my own party, was to say we are going to have a real vision for our country. We're going to stop trying to lead the world in weapons of mass destruction and engagement in military campaigns throughout the world, being the world's kind of policeman or America's lapdog, as some people say. But instead, we're going to use the money to create skilled employment, a new economic base, and to contribute to the cleaning of our beautiful planet. It seems to me that's the way forward, and that's what we should be campaigning for. And I very much hope that this is the start of an ongoing campaign, because I'm sure that I can speak for all my colleagues here, we're determined to ensure that the main gate decision, which this government may well be going to take sometime in the next few months, is properly debated both in Parliament and in the rest of the country too. And in order to do that, we need an active campaign from yourselves and everybody else who feels like us passionately about these matters. Thank you very much indeed.